recording.
Yeah.
And I will open the webinar. And let's see how many will join us.
Are you going to do the initial introduction, Christian?
Yeah, I have already added that in the presentation you guys prepared. So
Great.
Let's see. Are you very tired, Jay? Yeah. You look like.
I'll smile. It's okay.
I mean,
how about some sympathy for me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
of course,
I was thinking
Pauline.
exactly
Sorry,
that,
I
yeah.
completely forgot. It's 2 a.m. for you. Yeah.
So
Sorry.
We
I
must
just
have
took for
chatted.
granted your efficiency.
yeah, shows that there's a few people in the attendees that need to be promoted. Leon,
Yes,
Gerson,
I'll do that.
I think we are online as well. So
yeah.
You are online because I joined.
And Fion also.
Peter Petersen is mentioning that he cannot see who else is in the webinar.
No. If you're not a panelist, you do.
Good morning. Good evening.
hello. Good day.
Good
Good
day.
Okay, it seems we are like 18 people right now. Well, I'm not sure is probably okay. Should we just start or? Maybe we give 1 minute more to others to join.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Hello.
Tiziano.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Emma is suggesting that probably due to the relatively small number of attendees, probably could be better that we can switch all to panelists so we can see each other and have a better human interaction, right?
Worst, except if you don't have your camera. It's back. So Jose, can you upgrade everyone?
And then probably when this happens, we can.
Yes,
start.
I already upgraded everybody, but those that are not there, they decide to remain the attendees. There are 15 panelists and 5 attendees.
So in that way, it's kind of like a workshop.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's start, shall we? So welcome everybody to this focus session. We've been actually working on it for some time now. We've been the last few months quite busy with this concept of the federated network. And we've been progressing quite a lot. We are right now, I hope you can see my presentation without any image or
Okay.
sharing thing. Okay. So here on the top, you see the logos, basically of the ones that have been more involved in creating this and initializing this concept. Definitely, as you well know, we started that around the aquaculture use case. And well, FAO, ICES are and of course UNESCO, IOC through IOD are the main promoters of this initiative, together with Jercent, who is representing here the University of Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. And well, without more preamble, basically what we want to, all of you here right now are more or less acquainted with this, so I will skip some of the formalities, but the aim of this session is identifying the core principles and values for the governance model that will be established through the Ocean Practices Federated Network. This session has been established because across the last months, the needs from our partners involved in this initiative, they have been raising this question several times. So we really thought it was the moment to start breaking the ice with this. What we expect from this session today is that we are able to identify some broad scenarios where this possible governance of the OPFN, of the Federated Network, could entail. We would like to have an initial engagement of user communities, which is now already accomplished through FAO and ICES. But we would like to go a bit farther with that and establishing a working group to start really tailoring or co-designing from the beginning all this network. We are trying to establish a pilot use case around the aquaculture. As I mentioned, this initiative started last year in a workshop that happened in Trondheim in collaboration, or was initiated through Jercent and OBPS. And yeah, after establishing this pilot use case, definitely we want to have a short, mid-term timeline and a roadmap on how to progress and keep implementing this use case and the network itself through all this. So the agenda for today is a bit busy, but I hope it will be productive. We will start with an introduction where Jay will basically provide some background and definitions on what is a common practice, what is considered the best practice, and what is a standard, so we all can have a common understanding of the main thing here. I will introduce then briefly the concept of the OPFN and the initial design and core elements for governance. And after that, we will proceed through some examples of governance from our founding members, which is ODIS, FAO, and ICES, and of course, OBPS. And after that, we expect to have a discussion. We have prepared 6 main questions to discuss around. I would like to mention them now, so you keep them in top of your head, so when the moment of the discussion comes, we can be more focused towards the questions, which is what is the responsibility of the possible nodes in terms of quality assurance of the content that they are sharing? What would be the the discovery content in terms of are we going to display only or make available only open access resources, or other types of resources restricted would be also discoverable through this network? What are the requirements for joining the OPFN? Who can join? How can join? What would be the agreements, processes for submitting the documents, quality control and validation of those submissions? How are the partners' contributions recognized throughout the network? Which should be the rules for sharing the information across the network is another question. We would like to start as a starting point using the ODIS OIH governance model that Lucy Scott will present later. And last but not least, how the rules from the existing nodes may coexist with the OPFN principles. So these are the kind of questions that we would like to address today. So say that, please, I would give the floor to Jay to start providing background and a bit on the definitions of the concept of practice, best practice, standard, etc. So
Thank you, Christian. I would like to share my screen. So if you
yes,
don't very much do that. Okay. And you see my screen in display mode.
yes,
Great. So we had a discussion about, as Christian was saying, best practices, standards, and other means of creating improved interoperability, and I would say trust in data. And I thought I'd start this at Christian's request, looking a little bit about the definitions and then about the ocean best practice system. So let me start with the beginning. There it is. With the definition for best practices. And this is a definition that was published some years ago in the time frame of 2019. A best practice is a methodology that has repeatedly produced superior results relative to other methodologies with the same objective. And there's just a few key words: repeatedly, superior, and with the same objective. Because if the objective is not the same, the practice may or may not work, even though it's best practice in a given environment. And then the question of how do you bring a method or a practice to be a best practice and to be fully elevated to a best practice. A promising method will have to be adopted and employed by multiple organizations. So it's not simply the advocacy of a single organization that represents the creation of a best practice. And there is an emphasis of these are created by the community for the community. They tend to rise from the bottom up. Turning now to standards. A standard then refers to a documented set of guidelines, specifications, or criteria that are established basically to create a norm for a particular process or system. And historically, standards are created by international and national organizations, standards organizations, such as ISO or IEEE or OGC, and SEN at the international level, and examples such as the NIST in the US at the national level. So what's the difference then between the best practices and standards? In reality, they represent an ecosystem in which they really are very, very closely tied together in many ways. Best practices evolve from individually developed practices. Standards are created through defined processes under standards organizations, as I mentioned just a minute ago. Practices can transition to best practices, to endorsed practices, and in some cases go to standards, depending on the way they are operating in the community. And as you turn to standards, standards are actually implemented through related best practices. So you see, it is an ecosystem. And when we talk about best practices or standards, we really should be talking about both together. And I have on the right here a commentary of what they mean and the benefits that you see from them. Finally, I'd like to talk very briefly about the Ocean Best Practice System. This was created to support international access to methods and endorse methods as we've moved together OBPS with GUS to create an endorsement process. The vision is to have agreed and broadly adopted methods across research, operations, and applications. And the structure to support that is more than just a repository. The community felt that they want to have peer review as part of the process. And so a journal under Frontiers in Marine Science was created. We have training capabilities and user support. as we evolved, new things came from the community. The formation of task teams where community members, not necessarily part of OBPS steering group, lead tasks. Some of them have been in diversity. One that's very interesting is in adapting best practices to the use of observations in regions of limited infrastructure, Africa, South America, etc. We have an early career ambassador program. We have an international capability, and that's through the workshop. And then we have in the Ocean Decade, the ocean practices. So we've continued to expand to support community needs and requests, and there's going to be additional things that will be coming forth as we see best practices evolve. Some of that involves the Federated network that we're talking about today, working with the OTIS and the OIH in developing a network of practices, and that'll be something that Christian will talk about in a few minutes. With that, I'd like to now turn to the repository and turn the presentation over to Pauline Simpson, who's the manager of the repository and the system. Pauline.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, and please tell me when. And I'm having to ask this because I have lost the monitor, and so I'm working under some problems. Anyway, good morning. I'm going to just follow on.
You're not in presentation mode.
And that's what I thought I was in.
Only in the top you have display settings.
Yeah.
If you click in the drop down arrow.
Where is that? Sorry.
On
Please
the
forgive
top,
me.
on the top you have show taskbar, display settings. And if you click on display settings.
Go next to it. One to
Next
the right.
one on the right.
I am sorry. This has to happen at 2 o'clock in the morning for me, doesn't it?
Display
I've
settings.
suddenly display settings. Where is that? I am not even seeing.
Your arrow is really on the mouse. It's on, or almost on. No. This the top bar.
Top bar probably is hidden behind the ribbon.
Do you want me to share my screen, Pauline, and you can give it with me?
No, not really, because I have updated. Would you like to pass on?
No, go ahead. Just do it this way. Why don't you just stop sharing and restart sharing, and we'll move forward.
I'll try it one more time, and please forgive me. I do apologize for this.
You've got
now
it.
it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's perfect. Okay. All right. So good morning and apologies for that. I'm going to carry on from Jay, as he said, just to cover the repository. I've just got 3 slides. And gosh, everything is so slow. Thank you. Okay, so let me describe the repository very briefly, and then we will finish up with the governance options that we use for the OBPS in total. The repository itself is provided for the ocean community as a sustained open access full text archive of methodological documents, and these serve as best practices, or they're intended as their precursors. Now, the scope when we began was identified as practices for ocean observation, but as we've progressed through the years, this scoping has been questioned by user requirements, and they are indicating that they have a much broader requirement than just focusing on ocean observations. And of course, additionally, the OBPS provides technologies to make its holdings fair. Now, we have 2 public interfaces. The first one is the repository, which is a content repository. And that offers a standard DSpace software submission interface. We use extended Dublin core metadata schema, and the software offers full text indexing as well. As of today, there are 223 records, and OBPS is harvested by a number of online discovery services like OpenAir and, of course, ODIS and Ocean Info Hub. What is different about OBPS is that it isn't just a bibliographic database. We don't collect just bibliographic metadata. It captures rich metadata, which is of value to the ocean community. And I've listed some of those down on the side there. Just to pick up, for example, we ask whether the method addresses which sustainable development goal, and similarly, does it address or comply with a particular EOV specification sheet? So you can see that we're asking for metadata outside the normal sort of publisher journal type metadata. At the bottom, you'll see that we do make some links to dataset URLs and to code repository URLs. And we are working with eModNet on this to try and link the data and methods in the record to show the link. We will show the dataset URL against our method record, and eModNet are looking to add the method URL to their dataset record in their catalog. Now, this is a manual input at the moment, and we use the CData parameter discipline, instrument type, and data management processes. And in fact, we actually try to use a lot of controlled vocabularies and terminologies and what I would call predetermined responses, so that we can try and control some of the consistencies of the metadata. And I'm not going to go on to describe the functionality, like version control, but I think it is worth highlighting that the DOIs are issued if there is not one that exists at the moment. The other software interface is the search interface, and it's a bespoke advanced search interface hosted on AWS. And the reason why we went outside DSpace is because DSpace didn't offer us the search granularity that we were looking for. And we've used semantic technology and natural language processes supported by recognized technologies. And you can see the technologies that we are using at the moment. There are 6 of them, ENVO and TEBI and the STOIO. But we're also adding the Asphathosaurus and worms, not as we speak, but in the next week or so. I'd just like to walk you very quickly through the process of semantic indexing. I don't know that you can see if you can see I'm hoping you can see my pointer. If not, we come to the submission interface where the metadata is manually input and the document file is uploaded. The raw text from the document file is then extracted, and it is passed through the tagging module. And there the raw text is mapped against the ontologies, these 6 ontologies that I've shown. And out of that exercise becomes automated tagging, indexing terms, and these are added to the manual indexing and manual metadata input that is already there. These are then available through the search interface that you see here. It's the semantic and elastic search interface, and it offers very specific and very granular metadata searches. You can search on EOVs, you can search on endorsed practices, SDGs, obviously author title, DOIs, funders, all the metadata fields we are offering now as a search parameter. Then coming to governance, and the reminder is this is not just the repository, but all of OBPS. And starting at the top, IOD and Goose, I believe Jay did mention these as our activity co-sponsors. And of course, they require the annual reporting and budget oversight. But underneath that is a steering group, and the officers of that are co-chairs, past co-chairs and co-chair elects, 2 of each, and a project manager. And there are a total of 25 members and representing discipline, geographic and gender diversity. And IOD and GOOS also have a seat, if you like, on SG as well. We hold annual meetings and we meet monthly virtually via Zoom. Now, the SG activity is guiding by their own terms of reference, also by the OBPS strategic plan and its objectives, which we are at this moment, if you like, addressing and revising. The present one, it goes up to 2025, but there is a need already to be looking at it for revisions. It's guided by policies that have been published and decisions that have been documented. And it's also by the work plan that needs to deliver the strategic objectives. Now, the work is structured under work packages, and each of those, and you can see there are 8 of them listed here, and they have work package leads and SG members, but we also invite external experts to support that work package work as well. And each of the work packages has a work plan and defined KPIs and deliverables to work to. Complementing the work packages, there are task teams, and these are time-limited tasks, and they are supported mainly by external experts. The 2 work packages that support the repository are work package 2 and work package 3, and you can see the leads of those. And just to finish, I would like to say that OBS is looking forward very much to becoming a founding partner of the Ocean Practices Federated Network. Thanks.
Thank you, Pauline. I was going to introduce before, Pauline, the concept of the Federated Network and the core principles that we were initially discussing, but considering that we have started already going through the use cases, probably I will leave that after the presentations of the rest of the panelists. So maybe I would like to invite Lucy Scott now to present the use case for ODIS and Ocean Info Hub governance and an example. Thank you, Lucy, and good morning.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Christian, and good day, everyone. I have I think 5 minute slot, so I'll go through these slides fairly quickly. I'll just give a quick overview of the Ocean Info Hub project and the Ocean Data and Information System. I know that many in this room are existing partners and already know about these initiatives, so I won't labor the details, but I'll present a few slides, conclude with some governance principles, and then I'll hand over to my colleague Pierluigi. So with regards to some initial objectives, they are to connect existing independent digital initiatives to form a diverse but interoperable and inclusive ocean data and information system. So to improve discovery and interoperability of existing systems and improve access to global information, data, and knowledge products for management and sustainable development. The Ocean Info Hub project is a project of the IOC of UNESCO, and it's implemented by the IODE Project Office. ODIS is the Ocean Data and Information System, supported by the IODE on an ongoing basis. So the Ocean Info Hub project developed the proof of concept for ODIS, which links partners or nodes through a lightweight schema.org based decentralized interoperability architecture called the ODIS architecture. A component of this is ODIS CAT, the catalog of sources, which you might also know about. So we worked with a number of partners globally, including Ocean Expert, Aqueducts, OBPS, one of our founding and core partners, the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, Euroocean, MarineTraining.eu, Airborne Data, and others. And we have 3 pilot regions: Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean region, and the Pacific Small Island Developing States. A number of partners that participated in the co-design process, which is resulting in our online openly accessible documentation, which continues to grow and develop over time with our partners in these regions and global partners These are our nodes that are currently indexed in the system, and OBPS, of course, is one of them. And we're working with a number of partners around the world to further develop the system. We have developed a demonstration front-end global search hub on top of Otis, which demonstrates content and allows searches across the network. On the front end, we'll be facilitating filtering by accredited sources, such as IODE accreditation and Core Trust Seal, as well as completeness of metadata. But neither of these filters are necessarily a judgment on the usefulness of any of the content, because that's only determined by the user. We also have a dashboard to report on the current status of the graph and alert nodes to any issues. So just some notes on governance and principles. The system is co-designed, transparent, and easily adopted, irrespective of the complexity of the partner system. Content that's shared is managed and exposed by federated nodes, and this is completely under their control. They can make changes at any time, which is then reflected throughout the network. Existing workflows and architectures are maintained, and Otis just provides the addition of lightweight specifications that makes these nodes discoverable over the full network. Partners publish their own licenses and terms of use. This is not done by Otis or top-down. Provenance is clearly maintained and the link given to the original source. When multiple records are similar, search results will show these grouped, and anyone can develop thematic or regional portals for their area of interest on top of this knowledge graph. So under principles, I haven't included any notes on the actual structure of these two projects, but since Pauline did mention governance with regards to steering groups, I can say that the Ocean Info Hub project and Otis both have steering groups. Also, under both of these initiatives, there are technical working groups. Many of the members are shared between them. Under the Ocean Info Hub project, we also have regional working groups for the 3 regions. And initially, we had working groups for each of our 6 initial specifications or patterns. However, now we've moved over to more of a GitHub-based system, and we have ongoing technical development with our technical partners. And specifications, or these pattern specifications, are governed by our open access documentation, and I can share a link to that in the chat. So I'll stop sharing, and then I'll hand over to Pierluigi for some additional comments.
Lucy. Yes, I'm just driving home a little bit of what Lucy said there, just within some of the larger lessons we're learning as the Federation of Otis grows. We recently talked about our federated structure at a meeting in Japan for plastics data, where they also want to create a federation. And indeed, the same sort of themes tend to repeat. And in a sense, these themes, the processes, of course, must be established in a way that supports the initiative. But the themes themselves are things to keep in mind. There are guiding principles, so to speak. So the idea, it's nothing new in terms of certainly political science or any kind of governance structure, where you have a pluralistic group, so with many different values, many different objectives, sometimes conflicting values, sometimes they're competing, but at the same time, they all wish to be embedded within a kind of multilateral framework, a framework where, in some respect, they're all moving in the same direction. And for us, that's the interoperability. They all wish to be heard. They all wish to be on the radar, each other's radar, so that the other issues can be dealt with as they come, collaborations can be built more effectively, and also basically people are working in the same direction. So that idea of nesting pluralism within multilateralism, I think, is the key to how we adapt the Otis governance. And I think that's a key idea. We're quite flexible. You know, what our steering committee or steering group or also our partners require, we can quite rapidly shape things because we've kept it simple. We've kept it very, very simple. Our open standards, and as Lucy mentioned, our GitHub environments allow people to change the behavior both in terms of process, but also in terms of technology quite easily. And because it's so easy to change, we're very careful to put on validation, quality control, etc., in a technical sense on top of that. So we know that any change, because it's easy, doesn't destabilize the system or have, let's say, unexpected effects downstream. So we're bringing very closely together the technology and the human aspect of the governance because they are in this sort of world, in the world that we operate in, the same with the OPFN, they're very close by their nature. If there's a disconnect between, let's say, the high level or the intention or the, let's say, the written goals and the way that the technology is implemented, you're in for trouble. So I'm just driving home those aspects, those open standards, those patterns, again, using the lightweight architecture of how the web already works. And that's very important. We did not use any regional standard, a European one, an Australian one, etc. We said, look, this is the international way the web works. That's what we're going to base on and sort of stabilize that, clean it up a little bit and provide specifications so people can use those open standards in the right way. We just do a structure of that. And then the governance of that is the key, because that is the language through which all of the other nodes talk to each other, how they express their value. So governing that technical standard and creating whatever mechanisms we need to around that governance is how people share what they want and make sure that they are heard, that they can speak and that they are heard in technical systems. Everyone can flag anything, so soon also users of the system will be able to say, wait, something's not right here. And as soon as things are flagged, that's another key part of multilateralism, an ability for conflict resolution, or in our sense, contestability. We don't expect major conflicts, but there would be contestability that something's not quite right. And then we can convene the OTIS Federation representatives to figure out a way to then resolve that. So really, we're going into an unknown open world with the correct mechanisms to flag things that are unusual to partners and begin to normalize this. So we go from diversity, potential confusion, but at least we're confused in the same way. We're talking about the same thing that confuses us, and we can resolve that. And then the only sort of, let's say, central control at this time is a very light curation of who joins the partnership, but we're very permissive about that. As long as they're like a legitimate organization, that they're not destructive or creating untrue data. I mean, obviously untrue data. We won't, for example, have the Flat Earth Society joining OTIS anytime soon, I don't think, I hope not. But we just curate that and make sure that they're not indexed, or rather that those who have a legitimate sort of approach are indexed. And that's essentially it. The rest is bringing the technology close to the actual operations and also intent and strategy, and having it all a continuum, which is validated. So whatever is said is actually happening in the back end. I think that's where we'll stop.
Thank you, Pierluigi, and Lucy for such a concise intervention. I'm going fast through the panelists because otherwise it will reduce the time for discussion. So if I'm not opening the floor for questions, please forgive me, because otherwise we don't give the floor to all the rest of the panelists. So Marc Taconet, I would like to give the floor to you so you can present FIRMS, the Fisheries and Resources Monitoring System from FAO. Marc, the floor is yours.
Morning, Christian. Everyone.
That was a big introduction.
Sorry, I think I am. Is it continuing? Yes. I have to unconnect and reconnect because I think I am connected 2 times.
Okay, it's okay. So meanwhile, Marc reconnects, I will ask maybe Aureliano Gentile to present the iMarine Ecosystem Approach Community of Practice. Aureliano, the floor is yours.
Good day, everybody. I am Aureliano Gentile. I'm working with Marc Taconet, and I am working in Rome, FAO Fisheries and Aquaculture Division. Sorry, I'm sharing the wrong one. Okay. So, and this presentation has been prepared by myself and Marc Taconet, and we are going to deliver regarding the governance of the iMarine Ecosystem Approach Community of Practice. Just one slide introducing the concept that we produce, let's say, products in FAO, mostly in partnerships. Partnerships are the heart of the FAO mission to help build consensus for a world without hunger. Knowledge products are therefore produced in partnership with governments, civil society, private sector, academia, research centers, and cooperatives, so many actors. The iMarine ecosystem approach community of practice is an example of governance for data sharing and production of new content and knowledge. First of all, what is iMarine? Some of you or some of the participants well know this infrastructure, which is supporting the principle of the ecosystem approach to fisheries management and conservation of all marine living resources. It is a cloud-based community of users collaborating for data-driven decision-making and research through a supporting data infrastructure. It is powered by D4Science infrastructure, an organization gathering a number of research institutes all over Europe for collecting data. And in particular, here I'm mentioning the Memorandum of Understanding between FAO and the Italian National Research Council, CNR, for collaboration in the science policy nexus to help improve fish stock status monitoring and fisheries management. This MOU is also focusing on FAO capacity building initiatives and ultimately to promote open data, open science, and fair principles. So what is the ecosystem approach community of practice? Is a community towards working together for, let's say, a shared goal, as I described, and that access and sharing policies are meant to set principles and boundaries which shall govern the in and out flow of data by the community. So why the need of formulating such policies? To regulate the data access, so to guarantee the integrity of all data populating iMarine, to facilitate the access and the utilization of the data, and also for data sharing, so in managing any confidentiality aspects, share data among users, propagate the license and copyright settings, manage documents metadata, and provide documentation of sources. Essentially, the iMarine policy we drafted along a few projects in the past were made of these documents: the iMarine terms of use, the iMarine privacy policy, and the community best practices. I dedicated one point on the Creative Commons, which is the adopted copyright license for derivative products. This is important. So this is the main license scheme by default, let's say, configured in iMarine. And also some hints on the metadata, for which here we have identified the business metadata, standards, and inheritance of metadata in derivative works. We will see in a second what I mean. All this to say that the open data infrastructure supports the implementation of elements of the ecosystem approach to fishery. All this, this is the overall context. A little detail on the policies. So we have these three documents. The first two are legally binding, closely associated with the legal entity, and accepted when the user registers in iMarine or in its workspaces, what we call virtual research environments. The third document is the community best practices. I may say that while the terms of use and privacy policy are quite stable across time, although always subject to changes, the best practices is a sort of living document growing with experience and work and needs. So it complements the marine policy with a focus on the best utilization of the marine data infrastructure in order to fulfill the goal of the community, of the EACOP community, data-driven decision-making and research. The best practices are, let's say, all the chapters of that document are articulated on various sections. Here we are displaying a few categories and few items. So under the data access, user registration, user rights. So when you access the infrastructure, you accept to comply with the policy of the infrastructure. And very important, you act as a custodian for the data which you upload. And this implies the fact that you are eligible to do it by your organization, for example. We made also business metadata policy and metadata formats and standards. So yes, there are many kinds of metadata. Earlier we have learned about the extended Dublin core. So which are the standard one accepted, or let's say recognized useful for iMarine, and the notion of business metadata, which will be presented in the next slide. Data sharing. The best practices for sharing and publishing the data, for policy for data collection, so describing how data sets should be described, and the best use of the CC licenses. In case of producing new content and data transformation, we have some application derivative products. Ultimately, data dissemination, policy on how to cite the data which are disseminated, acknowledgement to the underlying infrastructure, data usage metrics. It's important in sharing federated products. It's important to acknowledge, to inform contributors on the usage of their product and for accounting and auditing purposes. Lastly, the preservation policy, so how data are preserved across time. My last slide on the business metadata. This is something which we have envisaged years ago. Consists of minimum set of descriptive metadata, implementing the open data principle and accompanying each iMarine shared dataset and information resource, if applicable. I put this icon just to highlight the fact that this is a sort of identity card of the products, where there are information what it is and what you can do with that, etc. In particular, ownership and context. So who is the owner, in which context that this product has been produced, the authorship information, and you can see here the list from author, title, and so on, which are the terms of use, so the copyright licenses, right management, the type of Creative Commons or other licenses indeed, and then description on the nature of the content itself. So here you have some fields. So the business metadata recognizes the primary responsibility to data owner to define the applicable policy, promotes availability of data under existing data policies and with proper documentation to let users understand the meaning of the access data, and promotes citation due provision of credit. This is, let's say, a sort of a means to share the products, the knowledge products, and clearly describe what can be done, what is the source, what is the conditions for sharing, for producing derivative product on top of them, etc. With this, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Aureliano. We give now the floor to Mark, who's back online for. So,
thank you.
Mark, please.
Okay, my microphone is working correctly now. Yes, thank you. Sharing my screen. Do you see it? Yes.
Yeah.
It's not in presenter mode.
It's not in presenter mode?
No.
It is in presenter mode, but it's a
I think it is.
Yeah, no, we're seeing your notes. We're seeing the presenter view. We're not seeing the audience view.
Not
So
sure.
you might be sharing the wrong screen if you have two screens or something of that nature. So then in the Zoom sharing screen options, you would select the screen that once you're in presentation mode, I would recommend you do that first, and then you would choose to share the screen which has the audience view of your presentation.
Yeah, okay.
No. Yes.
Yeah. All good.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, sorry for the issue I had before. I was just to introduce that we in FAO have a few examples of data sharing agreements. This is a way to generate global knowledge products through partnerships with different sort of institutions, governmental NGOs, private academic, so civil society. So Aureliano presented the iMarine infrastructure. I'm the secretary of the Fisheries and Resources Monitoring System, and it's one example of data sharing governance. Does it work now? How do I move it? Yes. Do you see a new slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. FIRMS is an information sharing partnership to facilitate the global monitoring of stocks and fishery status and trends. You can see this is a partnership that brings together 18 international organizations and that altogether constitute 23 regional fishery bodies or regional fishery management organizations. And there are also 4 collaborative institutions that provide various types of resources. So the objective is to provide access to a wide range of high quality information on the global monitoring and management of fishery marine resources. And with specific characteristics, as you might guess. First, state of stocks is a very sensitive and controversial information topic, and hence it requires a very careful handling. And that characterizes a lot of the way this is governed and the type of products generated. So first, it's a select community of providers, once recognized with a mandate to assess and report on stock status. And a set of principles have been negotiated. First, it's the ownership clearly lies with the data provider, and the information contributions remain within the full control on ownership of the partner. FAO acts as custodian for the information provided by partners. There is a declared objective because there was a lot of confusion in understanding state of stocks. So that partnership would facilitate the interpretation of stock status, and hence why we need to go towards harmonization of reports. However, without distorting the source narrative, which many times have been heavily negotiated in the meetings of the regional fishery organizations. It has to promote the best scientific evidence and avoid risk of conflicting information when there are overlapping mandates. So this is being discussed indeed, and traceability ensure that there is access to the source information. There are 3, mostly 2, but 3 governance instruments. First, there is a formalized partnership arrangement. It identifies the typology of institutions which can be member of firms. They have to have a mandate, and in a way, they are co-opted by the existing members. And the partners are decision makers when they sit in the steering committee. When they sign a partnership agreement, there is an Annex 2 which specifies the detailed arrangements on the nature of information and conditions under which this information is made available under the partnership arrangement. So this would cover the scope of information contributed, which list of stocks or fisheries, the indicators that are contributed, also the update policies. There are different update policies according to the partners' conventions, and how they transmission schedule once they have approved their own reports. How the ownership, their naming, etc., is specified in the disseminated products, and also, you know, specification on the transmission protocol on channels with different options. Throughout the steering committee meetings, there is a document, we call it the information management policy, which defines the principles and conditions governing the sharing of information that is contributed by the partners. So the language can be one of the 6 FAO languages. There is a quality assurance for ensuring high quality information. So objectivity, this is the best scientific evidence which should prevail. Transparency, there needs to be a link to the source document published. Timeliness, they are encouraged to provide as early as possible the reports on stock status. And consistency, again, to facilitate the understanding across different partners' contributions. And this is where there is the need for standardization. Also, handling of alternate views. This is carefully handled, and there is one of the partners designated to have primary responsibility over a certain stock, fish stock, in case various partners would report on that stock. And also the maintenance of historical data is assured. So the FIM's information management policy has also a big chapter on the information standards with a citation policy, a standard which was negotiated. There is a schema. You can see on the right the type of way the schema drives the layout. Concepts are defined, definitions are negotiated in the partnership, a list of control terms and the way they are mapped to the regional source is specified in this information management policy. The way stock status is presented, for example, with traffic light for stock status is also negotiated and agreed upon for dissemination. And also different views that can be extracted from the aggregated information, you know, a regional stock status, how is it aggregated from individual stock status, or how data can be extracted. Finally, this is the governance. You have on the top the international governmental organizations that are members of and decision makers in the steering committee. There are technical working groups identified where also the collaborative institutions can be members of to provide advice, technical advice, which then is provided to the steering committee for decision making. And I'm done with that. Thank you. You will hear now from a different example with ASFA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, Mark mentioned, please, Tiziano or Luca, either of you, I'm not sure yet, or both. The floor is yours, guys.
Okay, thank you, Christian. Let me share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Great. So hello everyone. I'm Tiziano and I'm working with FAO. Now we are going to share some slides about OpenASFA universe, about OpenASFA data sharing policies. Okay, so let's start with an overview of ASFA. ASFA is the acronym of Aquatic Sciences and Fisheries Abstracts. ASFA is an international partnership of over 100 aquatic sciences institutions around the world. ASFA was founded in 1971, and its mission: organize, promote, and share information related to aquatic sciences, fishery and aquaculture, and paying particular attention to hard-to-reach research. The need of
your slide is still the first one.
Huh? Okay, so I changed the slide. Can you see the second one?
No, not yet.
No.
Now.
Yes.
Okay. Now can you see the overview of ASFA?
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that ASFA is paying particular attention to hard-to-reach research, the need of developing countries, and global societal objectives. And of course, ASFA partners contribute records to the database and maintain the subject thesaurus, the ASFA thesaurus. And can you see the next slide?
No.
ASFA. Okay, so I can try in this way. Okay, so I stopped the presentation mode, so probably there is a problem with it. Okay, so
that's fine, Tiziano.
Okay, so let's go ahead with the ASFA records. Okay, so basically the ASFA partners can create bibliographic record for research published by their institution and in their country and region. The focus of record is on gray literature, reports, dissertation and thesis, guidelines, and best practices. ASFA's ability to share and promote research with particular attention paid to developing countries and global societal needs is, of course, an incentive to partners to contribute. In the last years, ASFA has invested in technology for the sharing of its data. As you can see on the right side of the slide, a screenshot of an ASFA record. Okay, so let's go ahead with a comparison between the old software and the new software launched in 2021. So the new software, the Open ASFA software, enabled ASFA to share its partner records on multiple platforms. Before this new software, the ASFA software, in the ASFA software, records were produced using an MS-DOS based software. This software allowed users to create records and share these records using the ISO format, which of course is very limited. Using the old software, the only source of ASFA records was the full ASFA database published by ProQuest. So the ASFA database has over 4 million records, and it was available at cost of subscribers. So it consists of both records created by partners and ProQuest. And as under the agreement ASFA has with ProQuest, records created by partners can be freely shared on their systems. Now we are going to speak about the new platform, so the new Open ASFA. The new Open ASFA was launched in April in 2021, and of course, this software is used by all the ASFA partners to create records and edit records, either manually or using the harvester. The harvester basically is using the OAI-PMH protocol. So we replace the existing ISO format with a new format. We call this format Open ASFA format, and in this way the records are freely available from the VRE, from the virtual research environment, using APIs. So, and you can choose if you want to download the records in XML or JSON. The OpenASPA records are now searchable on the FAO Fisheries and Aquaculture website. Now we are going to share some news about OpenASPA 3.0. As I said, we are using OAI-PMH protocol to harvest records from relevant repositories, including Aquadocs and Zenodo Fisheries community. These harvested records are mapped to OpenASPA's update metadata schema and can be edited or enhanced with ASPA's detailed indexing tool. Basically, it's a sort of backend application to edit and index records. So at the moment, ASPA continues to cater for partners with poor internet connectivity by providing a sort of offline import using the Excel file. How we are sharing data. So basically, all records published in OpenASPA are, of course, freely searchable on the FAO Fisheries and Aquaculture website. At the moment, we are providing over 25,000 records. We are also included JSON LD format on all our records, and we can share our records, for example, with the Ocean Info Hub. So at the moment, we are still working on it. So we are planning some updates, for example, about the better usage of vocabularies and advanced search options. And thank you for watching.
Thank you very much, Tiziano. We are very happy to see that you are already connected to OIH. The time is running fast right now. We have Neil and Fionn and then Pauline with Aquadocs left before starting the discussions. We have nearly 24 minutes. So I will give the floor to Neil. And well, he's suggesting to keep only with the summaries and then start the discussions as soon as possible. So it's up to you, Pauline, as well to.
Yeah, Christian, if I can just hand straight over to Fionn, actually, I think she will talk and I'll maybe just supplement.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Neil. Yeah, I will just do a very quick summary. I will share my screen. Hang on a minute. This one. Everything. So you should see everything there. Yeah, so we are, IC's International Council for the Exploration of the Sea. Excuse me, there's a. Yeah, I mean, if you want to read about us, this is our website. Intergovernmental Marine Science Organization. I'm mostly in the publications department, so that's what I know about. Yeah, a huge network of, well, relatively 6,000 scientists from over 700 marine institutes. I do have another slide. Here we go. This is ICES in numbers. Yeah, lots. These are all the different kinds of publications we do. Training courses, lots of meetings, all sorts of things. This is most relevant. So we have a library, our own community standards, so times, so techniques in marine science, data guidelines, advice guidelines, technical guidelines for advice. There is a difference, I promise, between those things. Agriculture reviews. Everything we publish is CC by 4.0, so that's the general kind of license. Although we have in our library, we do have ability to sort of add different licenses, so we're not always in there. We can be a bit flexible with it. I wanted to open. This is our library. This is what I see multiple times a day. So yeah, we have, I think, 10,000 items there, but not all of them are relevant to the standards and guidelines that we're talking about here. I want to show you one, which should be, so this is the Times series or survey protocols, which is included in that. And this is just a general, this is what an item looks like on the public end. Figshare is the platform. We have found it very good. It's very easy to add metadata, well, categories, keywords, big descriptions, very, very findable. And as I said, license is CC BY. These are custom fields. So again, Figshare was very good for adding custom fields in, which, as I've talked to Christian about, is actually very helpful for if we need to add custom fields to be, to be sort of input into the network. Because let's have a quick look. I made a example one. Here we go. So this is a similar, not the same item, but this is on our draft site. So after discussions with Christian and talking about the different kinds of extra metadata we might need, I've just added these. So I mean, these we need to be talk about this and sort out what we want. But yeah, so these should translate into what we need to put into the network. Yeah, Figshare again, we have a API. Very, for me anyway, very easy to work with. Yeah, so that is essentially what I know about the library and the documents. And maybe Neil can come in about governance. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Fionn. Pierre-Luigi's got a technical question there about JSON and schema.org. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I don't know if you do, Fionn.
Yes, it does. Yeah, we can I mean, export anything from the API in F. I'm not an expert, but pretty much any format that I know. JSON, I've been working in JSON. I'm just looking at your question.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah, exactly.
Okay, we can do it in the chat, not to take time away from.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Can you see me? I can't see that I've got camera control, so I don't think you can see me.
No, not really.
No. Okay. Well, I've got no control for a camera. I can see on the Zoom. It's just blank. There's nothing there. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, Fionn's covered like some of the technical aspects of the publications part. I mean, of course. Well, I can't share my screen, so I can't show you anything either. I don't know why I've got no controls here. So we do a lot on the data life cycle. So of course we're touching on all the things that have already been talked about here in terms of standards, licensing, best practice, community best practice, fair data, governance, etc. ICIS is already working a lot with the likes of FAO and the regional fisheries management organizations, the regional sea conventions in the ICIS area, which is both OSPAR, HELCOM, and AMAP in the Arctic. So we're doing a variety of things. We're either adopting or taking on external standards as they are. And of course, there are things like the ISO standards, for example, or we are adapting standards as need be. We tend to try and not do that like everyone else, but of course, in the ICIS context, we are working towards management advice for clients, which is the likes of the European Commission, which gives some specifics, and that's why we have specifics around the guidelines we use for things like management best practices, technical guidelines for advice, agriculture overviews, etc., which needs some context, and there is a kind of like a whole stakeholder management context, which sometimes means that we can't just take things off the shelf as they are. Like a lot of others, as Fionn mentioned, we're also using the Creative Commons CC BY, both for publications and for data. We do, however, have bespoke licenses for things that are not covered by open access. However, we have standardized that across, so it looks the same as a CC BY license. It uses the same layout and language, but it is specific for non-open access data. So we've done quite a lot of work. How that works in terms of governance, we have a variety of governance models in place in ICES. I would say that they fall largely into 4 categories. We have what we might call dedicated governance, semi-dedicated governance, devolved governance, and then things that are really kind of centered around the Secretariat, which is based in Copenhagen. So the dedicated governance is usually where we have an expert group that is solely working with the governance of a particular aspect of the work, i.e. that could be a methodology such as like, sampling, but it could also be like a particular data flow. So we have many examples of those, and then we have semi-dedicated governance where it could be an expert group that has a term of reference towards a particular data flow or a particular set of standards or methodologies. And then we have devolved, where basically the governance is split among acting parties, and this can be between the regional sea conventions such as OSPAR and HELCOM, or it could be between the RFMOs such as NIAFC and NAFO, where they are actually the decision-making bodies and coming with the standard, and we are then adopting it in concert. So there are various models that we do that in, but the one thing that's always the same for all of those models is there is an overall understanding of roles and responsibilities. They're defined, who's implementing, who's the owner, who actually reviews these concept standards, guidelines, policies, etc. We have quite a lot of those. I'll specifically mention the vocabulary governance because this is quite a beast. I think we have something like 450 code types in the ISIS vocabulary server. So that's called vocab.isis.dk. Some of that is basically just taking in vocab terms from other systems such as CDataNet, eModNet, FAO, for example, all the concepts there. And some are, dedicated where, for example, we have platform governance, which is all things like vessels, monitoring vessels and ships of opportunity, etc., which is a wider governance. That's like an international governance where we have content governance and technical governance. All of that is run through GitHub. So we have like a core group that deal with that, and then they farm off the questions to the different communities of practice if we have a particular question about vocabulary, etc. So there's a very good management system around that. But that's just one example, and I think we do not have time to go through all the different examples. But of course, we work with Mark and Oriana on things like the Cooperative Working Party on Fisheries Statistics, CWG, which is also a good way to work, which is once again a community of practice. So I think that's probably enough background.
Thank you, Neil. Pauline has kindly agreed on skipping the section for aqueducts, so we can dedicate the last 13 minutes for having discussions and the open floor. Nonetheless, I would like beforehand just in just 1 minute present you what we were thinking about the Ocean Practices Federated Network. I hope you can see my screen. Basically, what we are discussing is providing a global distributed system from independent interoperating methodology management systems that can support a transformative cultural shift in how the different diverse communities in ocean observing or ocean communities can share their practices for global adoption. And the main objective right now, at least, or the priority for this federated network is providing discovery and access to the different methods, best practices, and standards around. We have a very initial proposal for the architecture of the possible system using ODIS Ocean Info Hub as the interoperability layer. We have potential step forwards as I mentioned, on creating a use case for aquaculture in particular. We have already FAO connected to Ocean Info Hub. ISIS have summarized and successfully displayed how they are flexible to adapt and to connect to the JSON-LD pattern if necessary. There is a need for, of course, generalizing to other types of formats. It's not only sharing documents, although initially would be documents, but there can be other types of formats like multimedia, archives, training, resources, etc. And of course, as we move along, there will be a need for quickly involving other stakeholders like the European Union Aquaculture Assistance Mechanism. So as Lucy and Pierluigi mentioned in the beginning, we had this discussion some time ago and proposed some very core values for the governance of the federated network. But most important, what the view that we have is that all methods are relevant. It's not only a matter of sharing best practices, because the concept of best practices is relative to the environment, to the resources, to the location, etc. The exchange of knowledge needs to be fair. I mean, it's not every node needs to provide and retrieve, of course, but one node only retrieving becomes a user, so it wouldn't be an official node for the knowledge. This needs to be fair. And when we talk about fair, also quality assurance it is an issue that needs to be, or what we would like to see is that it's provided and guaranteed from the node side. And last but not least, the sovereignty of the nodes, as it has been mentioned around the different presentations as well. So every node makes its own decisions. Every node is free to choose what they want to show in their interface or what they want to ingest into their system from the network. So say that, I would just go back to the questions, and I apologize for the quick acceleration of this. And I would like to really open the floor to discussion over the questions that were mentioned in the beginning, and you probably can see right now in the screen. So we are like almost 12 minutes left. So guys, the floor is yours. Whoever wants to break the ice in whatever of these topics or is completely welcome. Emma Heslop has raised the hand.
Sure, I'll break the ice. There were super interesting presentations. It strikes me that you know the content is slightly different, right, between the different systems, but they obviously have their own brands and management systems and et cetera, and principles of operation. For a federated system, you want some commonality in that principles of operation, right? These are existing brands. They're not, we're talking about connecting existing brands together in a federated system to enable greater cross access to information, which is always a good thing. Have we done a mapping of like how the principles map together from OBPS to these other systems, so that we see what the commonalities are? This would be potentially a first space for what these would be.
Very shortly, I can respond to that. We have been already conducting, together with FAO and ICES, an exercise for mapping the metadata that every system has and see where we have overlaps or potential collisions.
So mapping the metadata is a great start, but I would think the principles upon which these systems are operated, around how they accept their content, or you know, those sorts of things, that mapping is also important to establishing a lighter touch entity sort of that would link everything, right? This is what's being proposed, as I understand it.
Christian, if I may. Yeah, so indeed, like the lighter touch entity is based on the same sort of Otis technology. That's exactly what we knew. We can't dictate the local standards of any national node or regional node, but we can leverage how the web works and also get the rest of the world to sort of join the internet, so to speak. So that's that lightweight schema.org layer on top, within which people can then nest their local customizations if they need to. The OPFN is somewhere in between there. So to say, okay, can we actually bring that a little bit deeper so that that sort of federation of method sharers can normalize to the next step, right? Again, there will be pluralistic structures, there will be different norms, but at least that next step, we're getting a bit closer. Maybe we can agree on a few more fields, a few more ideas, and that's where the co-governance has to be focused, because that's our language of speaking.
Thank you, Perlioji. Mark had hand raised as well.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, so we talk about a community that share practices and that may become best practices. I would say that first, yeah, there should be a sort of governance that, you know, would at least, you know, decide whether or not a contributor may be providing good contents. Then I believe that the responsibilities of this contributor is to at least filter maybe when contributing what they think are best practices based on their own vocabulary, so that it's not just a repository of everything. Like now, OpenASFA is going to provide, but this is about many things. Maybe 2% or 10% of this is best practices, and so I would say OpenASFA should. They know their content. They should say, well, this is our filtering based on our vocabulary. There should be also then indeed a sort of mapping exercise among vocabularies across the providers. I hear ISS has done a lot of work on mixing different vocabularies. Maybe this is a very good base to start, putting together different, but there may be other works. And in the end, maybe, in order to elect, to have the community deciding what is best practice, there may be just ways of, citizen likes or feedback from the community as to what is, having best results in after consulting the search and experiencing the best practices that are delivered through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. There are a few interactions through the chat, but it's been hard to me to follow on. Neil had the hand, and then Pierluigi afterwards.
Well, I think Pierluigi was actually first.
Go for it, Neil. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. It's just a short one because there's a lot of information flying there. I just wanted to get an understanding from what I see is everyone has some form of open license for their publications best practice. I just wanted to clarify if that was the case, because I could see one of your bullet questions was there about what about things that are not open access. So I just wanted to clarify if the scope of this, are we talking about things that are published or publishable and under open access licenses, or are we also going to be dealing with things that potentially where you can only see the metadata for? So I just wanted to understand from the different partners here where we were with that.
Christian?
Neil, I don't know if I understood the question. Maybe Pauline, are you going to respond to this? You're muted, Pauline.
Thank you. I was just going to say that from the OBPS point of view, and it is different because we are a full text repository. So therefore, we do have to be very careful about whether it is open access or what the license allows you to do about it. So that's a control on us in a sense. But if you are just a metadata only repository, then you are not constrained in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Pierluigi?
Right, yeah, also on that, again, we have that insulating layer. We have that metadata sharing layer through the Otis approach, which the OPFN will also have, right? So if you do have content that is not open, you can still share the metadata to let people know you have it. And then, for example, either a contact information or a web page to where you can negotiate access for that. So at least that's fairly safe. If it's so sensitive that you can't share the metadata, that's just life, right? Then you just don't push that to the federation. You just turn that filter off. In terms of the licensing, that's interesting because across the whole Otis initiative, there is still no modern norm for communicating licenses, right? People use text mostly. Creative Commons allows the use of linked data, so URLs to their license page. They say, yes, that's a valid way to identify our license, but many others don't, right? So that's something that's quite interesting. If there are custom licenses, etc., I think, again, the OPFN can sort of modernize the behavior of methodology management systems by saying, look, we will commit to having a page that describes the license, and we commit to having that page at a certain URL in perpetuity. If you do that, then basically you have something that we can put into these metadata exchanges and identify the licenses. But maybe that's one of the first orders of business for this federation, OPFN, is to basically catalog the licenses that it operates under so that all people are aware of them and we can see similarities because, many custom licenses are probably very similar. We group them and then communicate them a little bit more clearly to the consumers of the content.
Jay, and afterwards, Mark.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Neil's comment. I think that we had a philosophy in the ocean best practice system of being only open. And what we found was that that was a limitation to some extent because many standards are behind pay firewalls. And yet we wanted to bring the standards in. And so I think we ought to look not only about our organizational best practices, but how we want to deal with standards that are, in fact, not openly accessible. I think the step forward in this, and I agree with what Pierluigi was saying, and in addition to the licensing, I might add vocabularies as something that we should talk about as a topic adding to the agenda. The third area is that each of the organizations should, in fact, follow its own policies, but we do want to have the capability of tagging the documents themselves, helping the users understand more than just the metadata. And in doing that, we have to have some way to bring the documents in and then respect the privacy requirements or the firewalls that go around the documents. We can do this by, for example, bringing the documents in, processing the tagging, and then the documents would go back and not be retained. But I think these are the things we have to discuss.
Mark?
Yeah, to come back on this question of licenses, recently in developing an evolved standard for FAO's metadata, we suggested, and this is being adopted currently, to add a field for standard license. I mean, this is a field which is machine readable, so that this indeed helps, and this is a start. So it's just promoting these new avenues for facilitating, the processing of information. This is legal interoperability, actually. The default is that the provider define its terms of use or license, but in absence of those, then there might be a rule decided by the governance of this initiative to say, well, this will be the license assigned to contributions which do not come with any terms of use. And then when it is disseminated or redisseminated, it comes with this license, but this is understood by the providers when they join, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We are passing 2 minutes from the time. Is the last chance, I would say, for somebody wanting to add her or his contribution. Okay, Neil, last.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't know if it goes without saying, but perhaps we should just say it that I mean, of course, we're quite committed to this, and working in the field of regional international governance already, this makes a lot of sense for us. So you have our full support, and we will do what we can to back this up with effort in the various strands of work. And I can see there's going to be a fair bit of work in this. So just to say that ISIS is behind this, we're very happy. I assume I also speak for other colleagues here that are online and also presenting today, that they also feel the same.
Well, I must say it's for us a big opportunity and of course a pleasure to be engaged now in this initiative with you guys. So we feel the same. Mark?
Yeah, I was reflecting on what I said before, ASFA providing, thousands of records, and then which are the ones eligible for a specific subset. There are different layers, actually. I think we are happy that all ASFA records are being searchable, but at which layer level? So when we talk about aquaculture best practices, again, it's another level of governance, I would say, probably. The scope is aquaculture, is not everything, fisheries, etc. And so again, my understanding is that we can have one effort to provide data across the board, but then these data are presented in different outlets of the federated network, and each outlet has its own interface and requirements and objectives, and probably there are different level of layers and governance, or more stringent governance in different layers. That's my understanding, at least. Thank you.
Christian, if I may just respond to that, I think that's really essential, because there will be that, let's say let's call it governance coordination. It's more, governance is too big a word, but there'll be the coordination or governance of the core system, just to make sure it's working for everybody, right? That's one layer. That's the highest layer. That's most general. Then there will be, as you say, Mark, topical governance that's necessary. Like, again, those who are actually talking about the content, not so much just the system working, but the content and how things are identified as good, not good, best, not best. That will have to be devolved, right, to different groups who actually have expertise in each one of those fields. So I would imagine one for aquaculture or whatever else. And that's a scalable way for the system to grow, both technologically, but also in the human aspect of it. Otherwise, you can't have a steering group big enough to represent all of these interests. And in a sense, as long as those same principles and quality checks are being built from the core governance to the nodes, or let's say the sub-federations within OPFN, it will still work. So I think, yeah, that sort of devolved structure is the only thing that scales in this kind of environment.
Thank you, Pierluigi. I think that this also matches quite well, if I'm not wrong, with ICE's model on having those dedicated topical governance. Okay, well, I think the conversation is being very becoming very interesting, but we are 6 minutes out of time, and probably most of us, some probably need to go bed, or Jay, others probably have other meetings. Definitely what I need is to acknowledge and say thank you very much to all the panelists, and of course to all these early engaged partners in this initiative. This is just the beginning. We are going to bother you very soon to keep progressing on this. Jay, please. I think you
Can
want
everybody
to say
open
something.
the camera up and we get a picture of the meeting, please?
The last survivors, at least.
Great. Okay. I'll take one more and that's fine. Thank you. And if everybody will just wave at me just briefly, I'll take one more and we're done. Thanks, guys. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christian.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think this has been a very productive discussion. We have been taking note of everything. I would like to ask, if possible, for the different panelists, if you could send the presentations, so they would help us to digest the conversation from today. And yeah, unless somebody else wants to add anything, I would probably close here the meeting. And again, thank you very much, all of you, for your contribution today.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day.